Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mission 1820 and this week's episode of Have You Ever Wondered? If you're just joining us, we're in a series called Books of the Bible, and what we've been doing is giving introductions into each book of the Bible in just 5 minutes or less. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this week's book. This week we are in the book of Ezekiel. This is the 26th book of the Bible, and it's also the fourth of the 5 major prophet books. But let me start with this. If you enjoy reading the book of Revelation, I think you're going to enjoy reading this book of Ezekiel even more. See, the book of Ezekiel is a prophetic book that contains the visions, the prophecies, as well as the symbolic actions of Ezekiel, who was an exilic prophet that lived among the exiles in Babylon. Now, Ezekiel wrote the book in order to announce judgment upon Judah and to allow them just one last chance to repent. And the book also foretells the coming deliverance of God's nation from captivity in Babylon. As I mentioned, the author of the book is the prophet Ezekiel, as the opening 3 verses in the book actually name Ezekiel, who is the son of Buzi, as receiving the visions of God. The name Ezekiel is transliterated in Hebrew, means God strengthens. Now, if you're new to the book, be warned, it's a long book. It consists of 48 chapters. But there is good news. It's written in a very logical and orderly structure, which does make it easy to read. Now, the book can be divided into 4 sections. The first is the call and commission of Ezekiel. This is in chapters 1 through 3. The second is the judgment on Judah. This is in chapters 4 through 24. The third is called the judgment on the Gentiles, and this is in chapters 25 through 32. And then the fourth is the restoration of Israel, and this is in chapters 33 through 48. And just for reference, the book was written around 592 to 570 BC. Now, the book itself chronicles Ezekiel's life and his ministry, beginning with his call from God as a prophet and commissioning him as a watchman for Israel. Ezekiel immediately begins to preach and demonstrate God's truth as he predicted the approaching siege and the destruction of Jerusalem. And this devastation would be God's judgment for the people's sin of idolatry. So Ezekiel challenges them to turn from their wicked ways, and he spoke also to the surrounding nations, prophesying that God would judge them as well for their sins. Even with all the doom and gloom in the book, Ezekiel concludes with a message of hope, as he proclaimed the faithfulness of God and foretold the future blessings for God's people. As you read the book, you're going to come across some really amazing stories. Now, chapter 40, Ezekiel takes the time to give us a detailed plan for the new temple complex in Jerusalem. In chapters 15 through 37, you're going to read the 9 parables of Ezekiel. So why should we actually read this book? Sometimes we find ourselves in that predicament of asking that one question when we ask, "Why, Lord?" and then waiting in silence for him to answer. You see, the exiles had to wait 5 years for God to send Ezekiel. And when he did, his prophet had a message that the people didn't want to hear. And that was that God is the Lord of heaven and earth. And the judgment the people were experiencing was just a result of their own sin. The book reminds us to seek out the Lord in those dark times when we feel lost, when we have to re-examine our own lives, or maybe even have to realign ourselves with that one true God. So with that, I hope that this introduction is going to help get you started in the book of Ezekiel. So God bless, and thanks for watching.